Chapter 14. Religion's Stance on Evolution. My companion said, "Your position today will be difficult, for you must prove that the creation of man occurred in a manner befitting the divine." He continued, "Does the Creator simply take a piece of clay, knead it in his hands, breathe into it, and suddenly there is Adam?" This narrative strongly contradicts the sciences of evolution, which state that your Adam resulted from a series of preceding animal stages, that he is not disconnected from the members of his animal family, and that he and the apes are cousins meeting at a common ancestor. The definitive similarity in the structural details of their anatomy indicates they are all members of a single family. I replied, preparing for a substantial intellectual debate, "Let me first correct your information. I tell you that God did not create Adam in such a simplistic, instantaneous manner. Here is a piece of clay, you breathe into it, and it becomes Adam. The Quran narrates a completely different story of Adam's creation, a unique story where creation occurs through stages, phases, and a divine, extended time. The Quran states that man did not emerge directly from clay, but rather emerged from an extraction that came from clay. And we did create man from an extract of clay, and that man in the beginning was not a thing worth mentioning. Has there not come upon man a period of time when he was not a thing remembered? And indeed his creation came in stages. What is the matter with you that you do not attribute to Allah his due dignity, while he has created you in stages? And we created you, then we shaped you, then we said to the angels, prostrate to Adam, so they prostrated, except for Iblis. And when your Lord said to the angels, indeed, I am creating a human being from clay, so when I have proportioned him and breathed into him of my spirit, then fall down to him in prostration. The meaning of this is that there are stages, beginning with creation, then shaping, then proportioning, then the breathing of the Spirit, all within the divine time frame, meaning millions of years, for a day with your Lord is like 1,000 years of your counting. Look at these temporal stages of creation in Surat Al-Sajdah. Allah, the Exalted, says, "Who began the creation of man from clay, then he made his progeny from an extract of a despised fluid. Then he proportioned him and breathed into him of his spirit, and he gave you hearing and sight and hearts. In the beginning there was clay. Then came an extract from a despised fluid. These are the first beginnings of man, which were not a thing worth mentioning. Then came the proportioning and shaping, then the breathing of the Spirit, through which man acquired hearing, sight, and heart, and became truly human. Thus, Adam is the culmination of a lineage of stages, not an absolute beginning in a simplistic, instantaneous manner. And Allah caused you to grow from the earth as a growth. Here is a process of growth with all that growth implies of stages, phases, and time. But the real enigma is, what exactly were those stages? What were those phases? Is the entire tree of life from one father, all from clay by virtue of chemical composition, all returning in death to their earthly origin? This is a truth, but we mean by the word father something more than just the clay origin. The question is, did one initial cell generate from the clay, which then multiplied and gave birth to all those species and families, plants and animals, including man? Or were there multiple beginnings? One beginning evolved into plants, another beginning evolved into a branch of the animal kingdom like sponges, for example. Another beginning gave rise to fish, another to reptiles, another to birds, another to mammals, and finally another from which man emerged. Thus, man would have a separate ancestor, and each species would have its own specific ancestor. The anatomical similarity between branches, species, and families does not negate that each species emerged from its own specific beginning. Rather, this anatomical similarity among them all indicates the unity of the Creator, that their Maker is one, for He created them all from one substance, with one method, and according to one plan. This is the inevitable conclusion. However, their emergence from a single common ancestor is not an inevitable result of their anatomical similarity. Means of transportation resemble each other: the carriage, the train, the tram, the diesel vehicle. All are based on similar engineering principles and structures, indicating they are inventions of the human mind. But this does not prevent each type from having come from an independent father, from an independent engineering idea. Similarly, we cannot correctly say that a handcart evolved spontaneously, by virtue of inherent laws, into a horse-drawn carriage, then into a Ford car, then into a train, then into a diesel engine. Reality is otherwise. Each of these stages came through a mental leap in the mind of the inventor, a creative jump in the mind of the engineer. One type did not emerge from another, even though the chronological order might support the idea of one type emerging from another. But what happened was different. Each type came through a creative leap from the inventing mind and began independently. These are the errors of Darwin, the pitfalls and gaps he fell into when formulating his theory. Let us recall together what Darwin said in his book On the Origin of Species. The first thing Darwin discovered during his voyage on the HMS Beagle was the single anatomical blueprint upon which all animal families are built. The skeletal structure is one in most vertebrates. The arm in the ape is the same as the wing in the bird, the same as the wing in the bat. Every bone here corresponds to a homologous bone there, with slight modifications to suit the function. The bones in birds are thin, light, and hollow, covered with feathers. Then we find the giraffe's long neck has 7 vertebrae, the human neck has 7, and the hedgehog's neck, negligible due to its shortness, also has 7. There are 5 fingers on the human hand, and we find the same pentadactyl pattern in the ape, the rabbit, the frog, and the lizard. The gestation period in the whale, the ape, and man is 9 months, and the nursing period for all is 2 years. The tail vertebrae found in the ground ape are found in man fused together in what is called the coccyx. The tail muscles have transformed in man into a firm pelvic floor. Then we find the 4-chambered heart in the horse, donkey, rabbit, pigeon, and man, and the same plan in the branching of arteries and veins. The same plan is found in the digestive system, the pharynx, then the stomach, then the small intestine, then the large intestine, then the anus. The reproductive system, the testes, ovaries, vas deferens, and fallopian tubes. Likewise, the urinary system, the kidney, ureter, and bladder. The respiratory system, the trachea and lungs. We find that the lung in amphibians is the same as the swim bladder in fish. Naturally, after this, Darwin imagined that all animals are members of one family, dispersed by environments, with each family adapting to its environment. The whale in the glacial region wore a coat of blubber. The bears wore fur. The forest man in the tropical sun had black skin, becoming like a protective umbrella from the sun. Salamanders in caves had their eyes atrophy because they found no use for them in the darkness, thus becoming blind, while meadow salamanders are seen to be sighted. Animals that went into the water developed their limbs into fins. Those that invaded the air developed their limbs into wings. Land reptiles developed their limbs into legs. Does the embryo not tell us the story? In one stage of its growth, we see it breathing with gills. then the gills atrophy and the lungs appear. In a stage we find it has a tail, then the tail atrophies and disappears. In a stage we see it covered with hair, then that hair recedes from its body. Do the layers of rock not tell us, with the fossils they have preserved for us, a story of successional links about the appearance and disappearance of these species one after another, from simple single-celled animals to multicellular ones, to mollusks, to crustaceans, to fish, to amphibians, to reptiles, to birds, to mammals, and finally to man? Darwin was right and brilliant when he laid this valuable premise of anatomical similarity between animals, and he was right when he spoke of evolution. But he erred when he tried to explain the process of ascent, and he erred when he tried to imagine the stages and details of this ascent.
Darwin's explanation for the process of ascent was that it occurs by spontaneous material factors alone, where animals fight with fang and claw in the bloody, terrible struggle for life. The weak die, and survival is always for the fittest. That perpetual war in nature is what selects the fit and the strong, encourages them, preserves their lives, and paves the way for them. If this theory explains the survival of the fittest, it does not explain the survival of the most beautiful. For the patterned wing offers no material or subsistence advantages over the plain white wing. It is no more capable in flight. If we say the male prefers the patterned wing for mating, we will ask why, since this pattern represents no increase in efficiency. If the preference for beauty enters the calculation, the materialistic theory collapses from its foundation. Furthermore, the theory remains incapable of explaining why something like the horse emerged from the donkey family, or why something as delicate, refined, and beautiful as the gazelle emerged from the ibex family, even though it is less strong and less hardy. How do we explain the hoopoe's crest, the peacock's feathers, and the butterflies with their stunning colors and dazzling patterns? Here we are before the hand of a skilled artistic painter, perfecting and creating masterpieces, not before a coarse process like the struggle for existence and the war of fang and claw. The second error in the theory of evolution came later from the proponents of the mutation theory. Mutations are the new, sudden traits that appear in offspring due to uncalculated changes in the process of the female and male cell union and the meeting of chromosomes to determine hereditary traits. Sometimes these new traits are harmful, like monsters and deformities. Sometimes they are beneficial mutations for the animal's new environment. For example, an animal that enters the water develops flattened legs, a new trait beneficial because flattened legs are more suitable for swimming. Nature then encourages this trait, passes it to new generations, and eliminates the old trait for its unsuitability. Thus, ascent occurs, and normal legs evolve into webbed feet. The error of this theory is that it based evolution on random, chance mutations and errors, completely eliminating the process of design and creativity. These random mutations cannot possibly serve as the foundation for the precision, creativity, and mastery we see in everything around us. The mosquito lays its eggs in stagnant water, and each egg comes into existence equipped with 2 sacs for flotation. From where did the mosquito learn Archimedes' principle to equip its eggs with these floating sacs? Desert trees produce winged seeds that fly with the wind for miles and scatter over vast, limitless areas. From where did the desert trees learn the laws of aerodynamics to make for themselves these winged seeds that fly hundreds of miles searching for suitable land to grow? These carnivorous plants that devise for themselves deceptive, amazing traps and snares to catch, digest, and eat insects. With what intellect were they able to devise those tricks? Here we are before a universal mind that thinks, innovates for its creatures, and masterfully creates means for them. It is impossible to conceive of evolution occurring without this creative mind, who gave everything its creation, then guided it. The third obstacle facing Darwin's theory is what we have now discovered under the name of the chromosomal map, or the gene map. We now know that each animal species has its own specific chromosomal map, and it is impossible for one species to emerge from another due to the difference in these chromosomal maps. We conclude from this that Darwin's theory has stumbled. If the anatomical similarity between animals is an agreed-upon truth, and if evolution is also a truth, nevertheless, the stages of this evolution and its mechanisms remain an enigma. Were there independent beginnings, or do some branches meet at common origins? Evolution is mentioned in the explicit wording of the Quran, just as the stages of creation, shaping, proportioning, and the breathing of the spirit are mentioned. But science has not yet settled on a fixed theory for those stages. If we return to Surah As-Sajdah, which tells us that Allah began the creation of man from clay, then made his progeny from an extract of a despised fluid. Then he proportioned him and breathed into him of his spirit, and made for you hearing and sight and hearts. Then the meaning of the verse is explicit, that the first beginnings of man, from which Adam came later, are those whose progeny came from a despised fluid. They did not have hearing, sight, or hearts. Rather, these faculties came after the breathing of the Spirit, which is the final stage of Adam's creation. These beginnings, then, are akin to underdeveloped animal life. Has not come upon man a period of time when he was not a thing remembered? I do not think this differs from the sciences you speak of. The truth, after all this, remains an enigma. No one can claim to have uncovered the full truth. What happened might be something other than all we have said and other than all that scientists have imagined. The question remains open for research, and all that science has brought forth are hypotheses.